Greetings, I'm Demonac, and it's arena time. So this is going to be another entry in my Hearthstone Arena Beginner series, where I'm going to spend a whole lot of time going through pretty much every card in the deck selection phase. I'll try and go a little bit faster once I get to playing the actual games, but try and break down all the things, and this is going to be a tricky one because I just played Warlock, and the only other choice it's given me is Shaman. Shamans are really good, but they can be very tricky with their overload mechanic, and it's a tough one to get your head around as a beginning player. It's tough for me to get my head around, but you just got to play with it until you learn, basically. And Shamans are very good, so it's probably worth the effort. Now let's see, we've got the Wild Pyromancer, who is an amazing, very, very strong card. I don't remember if I had him in previous beginner matches, but 3-2 for 2, we know from the previous matches, that's good. That's a good set of stats. I mean, usually you're gonna get 5 points worth of stats for 2 mana, but his ability is fantastic. It just triggers when you cast a spell, not your opponent's casting a spell, and it deals 1 damage to all minions, which doesn't include players. It does include himself. He only has 2 hit points, so if you cast 1 spell, he's half dead. If you can't heal him or buff him in some way, casting a second spell will kill him. But say you cast a spell that does 2 damage to all minions, he will then tack on another point of damage to all minions, if he survived. I guess if it's all minions, he would die. But if I cast Lightning Storm, did 2 or 3 damage to all of my enemy minions as Shaman, he would then trigger and do another 1 damage to all minions, friendly and enemy. So that ability makes him very strong. If you start looking like, if you're a class that doesn't have a lot of area of effect damage, he is a neutral card. He's a minion anyway, so he's just about never going to be bad, right? He's a decent size for his casting cost, even if he is like a cheap minion. And he's neutral, so you can put him in any deck that you have where you, with your class cards and stuff like that, you just feel like you don't have enough area damage, or if you just find that weenies and rush decks are what's killing you, you can put him in and he'll help a lot, and he pops bubbles and things like that. There is a little bit of combo with the Shaman. I should talk about the Shaman's ability, right? Because the Shaman ability, it costs 2 mana like all the other hero abilities. You can use it once per turn. It's a little bit like the Paladin's ability, right? The Paladin makes a 1-1 every time. Well, the Shaman kind of does that, but every time he does it, it's random. There are 4 different totems that he can get. One of them, the Searing Totem, is just a 1-1. It's basically exactly the same as the Paladin ability. But the thing is, you don't know which one you're going to get when you activate it. All you know is it'll give you 1 totem, and it won't be the same as any totem that you currently have in play. So if I already have out the 1-1 totem, it'll have to give me one of the other 3. If I already have 3 different totems out, then I know exactly what one it'll give me because it has to give me the 4th one. If I already have 4 totems, it actually just does nothing, unless one of them dies somehow. But if you have all 4 totems out, you're doing pretty well. So your choices are, there's a 1-1, it has no abilities, but I mean that's a totem that can attack. All the other totems are 0-2, which means they can't attack unless you buff them somehow. But one of them is a healing totem. At the end of your turn, every turn, it'll heal all your minions for 1, which means, for example, with the Pyromancer, you cast a spell, he does 1 damage to everything, and at the end of your turn, he'll heal himself back up, or the healing totem would heal him back up. So that's pretty cool if you have that out. There's the Taunt totem. I don't really care what it's called. It's a 0-2 with Taunt, which is amazingly powerful. That's all. A lot of the time when you activate this ability, it's going to be random. You don't know which one you're going to get. A lot of the time you're hoping for the Taunt totem. And the other one, which you're hoping for a lot of the rest of the time, is the Spell Damage totem. It's 0-2. It gives you +1 damage on all your spells, just like another spell damage creature. And a Shaman has a lot of damage dealing spells. So the fact that's built into their class, that they can, I mean it's not reliable, but they can get a spell damage totem, it's very strong. So then we've got the Pint-Sized Summoner I've talked about before. I mean, she's a little bit small for 2 mana. And she has to survive a turn before you can use her ability. But every turn like, because it only triggers on the first minion you cast each turn, and if you cast her, then you know you've cast at least one minion, because she counts. But on following turns, the first minion you play costs 1 mana less. So, if you go second turn, pint-sized summoner, third turn, you could play a 4 mana minion already, with no coin, no anything else, just like, you go pint-sized summoner on turn 2, turn 3, Yeti, or something else crazy like that. So, if she lives longer, she's just giving you a whole bunch of free mana for minions. That effectively, one extra mana per turn, as long as you're playing a minion every turn. That's pretty amazing. But I don't take her very often. I find that she is. I mean, it's great that she's a target. Your opponent will spend a lot of effort to make sure she dies. But conversely, she rarely gets to survive. The Mana Tide Totem is a Shaman only card. You can tell from the border. At the end of every turn, it gives you a card. That's fantastic. 0/3, I mean, it's a little bit on the fragile side. Obviously, it can't attack, do damage. But your opponent has to kill... First off, this will work. The turn you play it, this will give you an extra card. You don't get to use that extra card right away, because it's the end of your turn. Your turn is over. But there's no way your opponent can stop you from drawing that extra card. So it's at least, you compare it to the Novice Engineer, the 1/1 for 2, and you draw a card right away. This will draw you a card just as well as that one, even if it's a little bit slower, like you can't use it right away. But your opponent, so you draw a card to replace this, and then your opponent has to spend effort killing it, or else you're just going to draw a card every turn from it and kick their butt. Drawing a card every turn will kick their butt. Plus, if you play this and then you have some taunt stuff out, it can be very hard for your opponent to get to it. Or if you can just keep their board clear by blowing up all their stuff, they might have a hard time getting rid of this, even though it's only a 0/3. 3 is just enough that a lot of the early game removal sort of spells, a lot of the spells that you play to kill your opponent's first or second turn play, they often only do 1 or 2 damage. So 3 damage is enough that your opponent's 1 or 2 cost spells are probably not killing it. It's a tough choice between this and the Pyromancer. I'm going to take the Mana Tide Totem, because why not? You don't really... I find, in my experience, you don't want too many of these, though. Because then you spend a lot of time spending 3 mana for a card that just replaces itself and then dies. It's a little bit risky. So here we have another Shaman card. It costs 0, which makes it pretty spiffy. And I haven't used it much, but it restores a minion to full health. So that's free healing on a minion, which can be pretty good. I mean, that can go a long way. And it gives the minion taunt, still for 0. So, normally the Oasis Snapdraw is not my favorite minion. You know that. I've tried to tell you, it's actually good in the arena, because it's so tough that it can do a lot of fighting. It's going to take more than one attack with a minion to get rid of this, unless that minion is so huge that you're glad it's hitting this and not you. But as a 2/7, you could hit something with him, and then Ancestral Healing, heal him all the way back up to 7, and give him taunt. Now he's a big taunt creature, which would make him way more worthwhile than he normally is. So that's a very interesting card, can be good. I'd still rather have more minions right now. I mean, it's very early in the deck. I don't know what I'm going to get, but I still like the Direwolf Alpha, right? His stats, again, he's only a 2/2 for 2, but he's giving more stats than that, because if you have one minion beside him, he's giving you an extra 1 point of stats by that one attack that he gives the adjacent minion. If you can put him between 2 minions, he's actually giving you 4 attack total. He works out pretty darn well. And of course, you can play him next to a minion that is able to attack now, so you're getting 1 point of attack from him immediately to help kill something or just do more to your opponent. So Direwolf Alpha is very good. And the other thing is, as a Shaman, I might be making a lot of totems. I'm going to have all these 0 attack creatures. Sometimes your opponent will ignore them, which is very risky. Sometimes your opponent will spend time killing them, in which case you're spending 2 mana and tying up a lot of their effort every turn. So it's kind of win-win with the totems. They're really annoying. But if I have a couple totems out and my opponent's been ignoring them, I can play the Direwolf Alpha. Now those totems can attack, like right away, probably. So anyway, it's good, trust me. So we have Razorfen Hunter is not usually my favorite. I like getting more than one minion for one card. It's just this one doesn't work out very well compared to most of the others, right? You get a 2/3, which 2/3 for 2 is good. 2/3 for 3 is pretty sad. And you get a 1/1, which, I mean, you're getting 3/4 worth of stats total. 7 stats for 3 mana is pretty good. But a 1/1 is not that strong on its own. Like, it just doesn't do that much. And the Hunter is also not that tough. It's only good if you have something that benefits from having a lot of minions. Now, it could work with the Direwolf Alpha and stuff like that, but I like all the other minions that give you that summon a minion as a battle cry. I like all the other ones better than this. I just find them better for the mana. You got the Bloodfen Raptor, which is fine. It's a 3/2 for 2, but it's nothing special if you're not a hunter, because some of its value on being a beast, which is of no value to anyone who's not a hunter. Then we have Bloodlust. This costs 5. This card has the potential to do insane amounts of damage to your opponent. Remember I said sometimes they ignore your totems? This is why a lot of people won't ignore your totems, and this is why a lot of them can't ignore your totems, because they might die. If you have 3 totems out, and you play Bloodlust for 5 mana, you're adding 9 damage that you can do that turn. Now, if they had Taunt, you might not be able to do 9 damage to their hero directly, but if you can, 5 mana for 9 damage directly to their hero in one card, that's insane. I mean, it requires other stuff. If I had 3 totems and a Razorfen Hunter out, that's 5 minions that are getting the +3 attack. That's plus 15 attack, right? Even if I have to spend a couple of totems or the 1/1 boar, which is now a 4/1 boar, to break through some taunts, they're going to do it, and they're going to do a whole bunch of damage. Like, Bloodlust is insane. Now, the problem with Bloodlust is if you only have 1 or 2 minions out, if you only have 1 minion out, it's kind of crap. It's very expensive and you're wasting it. You may have to, and you can, but yeah, it's not doing you much good. 2 minions, it's kind of borderline. I mean, it could still win you the game. If that's what it takes, extra 6 damage, fine. But if you have 3 or more minions, this card starts getting insane because it's geometric, right? For every additional minion you have, you're getting an extra 3 damage, and that's kind of crazy. We're going to take the Bloodlust. This is like a kill card, hopefully. So, Shamans do have weapons, but, well, here's what they have. There's a common weapon, which costs 2, and an overload. I'm going to talk about overload in a second. It's 2 attack and 3 uses. So it's very good early in the game for killing enemy minions and stuff. That's a common Warlock card. The other one they have is an epic card, so I'm unlikely to get it. It's Doomhammer. He mentions it all the time. It's like, for Doomhammer and stuff. It's a crazy card. We'll talk about that later if it comes up. But the point is, I don't have the common weapon yet. I don't think it's that likely I'll have it to give the deckhand charge. And he's pretty good if he has charge, but if he doesn't, he's a 2/1 for 1. That's very basic. Usually you should be able to get that with a better ability. Unless you're like a rogue who's almost always going to have a weapon, in which case that's kind of a kick-ass ability. The Bloodsail Raider can be very strong, right? Because she's already a 2/3 for 2, so she's fine stat-wise. She wins a lot of fights, or at least doesn't lose a lot of fights against other minions that cost 1 or 2 mana. But if you have a weapon when you play her, she gets extra permanent attack bonus based on how big your weapon is. Even a small weapon makes her kind of huge for 2 mana, right? That 2 attack weapon I mentioned, she'd be a 4/3 for 2. Which is not like mind-blowingly spectacular considering it kind of takes a combo to set up. But it's still really damn good. And if I had a huge weapon out there, like if you play her in a warrior deck, you could easily have a 5 attack weapon out there. She's a 7/3 for 2. That's nuts. But we're going to be taking Lightning Bolt because it's 1 mana, deal 3 damage. I can blow up a minion. I can burn down my opponent. It's very good. But it's not really 1 mana because it's got the special mechanic of the Shaman, which is Overload, as the tooltip says. The Overload is basically, it's like taking out a loan against your next turn's mana. So, whenever you play a card with Overload, you are guaranteeing you will have less mana on your next turn. In this case, it's only an overload of 1. So what it's really saying is next turn, I'll have exactly as much mana as I had this turn. So the fact that some of the mana is in the future makes it cheaper now. It means you can do more with this turn. It means you can play these cards earlier in the game than you might otherwise, although in the case of Lightning Bolt, that's not a big deal. That's not really that helpful. There are some things that are much like larger, more expensive cards that have a big overload that makes them a lot cheaper. Like there's a rare elemental. It's a 7/8 taunt. So that's a really huge minion. And it only costs 5. Like that's a huge 7/8 taunt for 5? That is crazy. The trick is it has an overload of 3. So you're paying 5 this turn, and then 3 mana next turn. So, say you played that turn 5. On turn 6, you only have 3 mana total. Like, your turn 6 is mostly wasted. But you got out a gigantic taunt minion that your opponent has to deal with. If they can't kill it right away, they could be in rough shape. I mean, you compare that, it's a 7/8 taunt. Counting the overload, it's 8 mana. The Druid gets an 8/8 taunt for 8 mana, but they have to pay it all at once, so they can't play it before turn 8 unless they have Inner Fire or Inner Fire and a coin or something like that. Like, they have to spend a lot more effort to get that out. The Earth Elemental, 7/8 for 5, it is nuts. In Constructed, people don't seem to play it as much because a lot of Constructed decks have tools built into them for killing big minions. You can't count on that in the Arena. In the Arena, fat is fat, and when it's fat that's that cheap, it's scary. Lightning Bolt is the overload on it actually kind of sucks. I'd almost rather it just be 2 mana up front, but it's not that big a deal. 1 overload, you have to think about it, because it can mess up your next turn. If you play multiple cards with overload, you can lock down a lot of your mana and actually just not be able to do anything on your next turn. So you have to think about that. But Lightning Bolt is generally going to be worth it, because it's just 3 damage for cheap. It's very handy. And of course, I could have Spell Power to boost it. I could have the Spell Power Totem and be getting 4 damage for 1 mana. So we've got Ancestral Healing again. We've got the Bluegill Warrior, who, given that I'm not likely to have many weapons, is probably a lot better than that Pirate. He's a 2/1 charge for 2, instead of a 2/1 for 1 that may or may not and probably doesn't have charge. So I still like this guy a lot because you pay 2 mana and you get 2 damage. If they don't have a taunt minion, it's 2 damage to anything the hell you want, including the other champion, in which case if you hit the other hero, then the Bluegill Warrior is still alive, and they still have to do something to kill it. Or you can just use it to do 2 damage to one of their minions for 2. That's perfectly okay if it kills their minion. Probably worthwhile. We've got the Loot Hoarder. He's the same price, doesn't have charge, obviously, but he draws you a whole card when he dies, unless he gets silenced somehow or stolen or whatever. But like 95% of the time, this guy is going to come out. He's not a great size for 2 mana, but he's still got 2 attack. Like, he's still going to do something. And when he dies, you draw a whole card. And cards are the currency of the realm. Cards are what makes you win. So he's very strong. I think that's a really tough choice. I'm going to take the Loot Hoarder, I think. I'm hoping I'll get more spells for blowing stuff up. And here we see a spell for blowing stuff up. Earthshock doesn't blow things up a lot. I mean, it's 1 mana, it does 1 damage. So that's nothing to cry home about, but it silences the minion first before doing that damage. Which is interesting how it works out. If I use that on the Loot Hoarder, first it silences him, so he loses his Death Rattle. He won't draw my opponent a card when I kill him. Then it does 1 damage to him and kills him. So it's very good for getting rid of Death Rattle stuff. It's very good for getting rid of minions that get buffed a lot. Like this guy, he can get buffed huge if he's taken damage a couple of times. If your opponent might be healing him or buffing his health back or something. Whatever, Earthshock him. The 1 damage is not going to kill him unless you damage him some other way, but at least he won't get any bigger. And in fact, if he already had some boosts, if he already had +3 attack from taking damage a few times, then you would knock that all off. So in this case, if I was trying to take this guy down and he'd already been damaged once, so he's like a 5/6, I have minions I want to attack him with, I can Earthshock him first, so it'll do the 1 damage, but it'll knock away all the bonus damage that he's getting from his card text. His card text is just gone. He would only have 2 attack left, so whatever minions I'm fighting him with might be able to survive, whereas they probably have no chance of surviving when he has 5 attack. They'd just be dying when they attack him. So, he's pretty good. I'm probably going to take the Earthshock over him at this stage, or am I? You know what? I don't have anything fat. Maybe I should take the Berserker. I might get a healing totem. It works really well with him. Actually, I think I will take the Berserker over the Earthshock this time. Earthshock can do some other funny tricks, though. Yeah, I won't go into that. There's card-specific things, but it works well with silencing first, then 1 damage. Works really well for killing stuff. Surprisingly well. There's the Stormpike Commando, and I don't like him very much. I mean, 6 stat points for 5 mana is not very good. And I would like him better if he was a 2/4. Again, you kind of want their attack to be close to their toughness. Like, ideally, for most minions, you want them to have attack and defense that are similar. And if anything, you want the defense to be slightly higher. Because it just makes it much harder for your opponent to get rid of them. So, like a 3/5 is a tough minion to get rid of, but it still does enough damage to be useful. 3/4, pretty much the same, right? A 3/3 is getting kind of fragile. A 4/2, he does a lot of damage, but almost anything can kill him. That's the problem. And for 5 mana, that's not very good. It's because his ability to do 2 damage to something is incredibly powerful. Right? Just 2 damage to whatever you need right now. That's a whole... I didn't take it. That's a whole one of those 2/1 charge minions. Just like built into him, basically. So that's really good. What I'm really hoping for a Shaman card, just like... Hopefully this is a spoiler, because if I don't get anything, I'm going to be pissed off. But there's a Shaman-specific card, and you know that the class-specific cards are always... you get just a little bit more for the mana than you would with a normal card. Now, it's harder with spells to judge that sort of thing. They still have guidelines, but it's not as clear. But with minions, a class-specific minion will literally probably just have 1 more stat point than a neutral minion with the same ability would have, if there was such a thing. Well, the Fire Elemental is a Shaman minion. It costs 6 mana, so he costs 1 more mana than this guy. He's a 6/5, and does 3 damage as a battlecry when he comes into play. So for 1 more mana, he has 50% stronger ability, and it was already a very strong ability. And he has almost double the stats, right? He has 11 points worth of stats to this guy's 6, but they're also better distributed because the attack and toughness are closer together. Usually works out well. Unless the minion has charge, in which case you're like, okay, the attack is fine, because that's what you're going to get to use it right away. Most minions you'd rather have more, the stats close together, like I said. So for 1 more mana, he's a 6/5, does 3 damage when he comes into play. He's fantastic. He's one of, Quill18, my fellow YouTuber has mentioned, he's one of the best minions in the game, period. He's very close to the top there. So I'm hoping I can get some of him. I'm not going to take the Stormpike Commando. I am going to take the Berserker because I don't have anything fat yet, and he's pretty strong. Out of these guys, I don't like the Patriarch too much. Again, he's wasting 1 of those stat points on being a beast, which doesn't help me because I'm not a hunter. And a 1/4 taunt, yeah, I like a tough taunt minion, but he doesn't have, with 1 attack, he doesn't usually kill the things that are trying to fight him. Like, my opponent has 2 minions the size of the Kobold Geomancer, they both attack, he dies, and they both survive, even though this guy's really fragile. Now, I kind of want to get an Earthshock, but I'm thinking of taking the Geomancer because I want to make sure I have enough minions, and I'm hoping I will get even more spell damage cards. Like, his spell damage can work really well in a Shaman deck, or it might not in the arena. We're going to find out the hard way. I think I'm going to take the Geomancer, though. So I can get another Manatide Totem. I don't really want another Manatide Totem because, it can be fantastic if you can protect it or if it stays out. It can never go too wrong because it will, draw a card to replace itself in your hand. But if you had several of these in your hand, you'd be like, I have nothing to defend them, and it's going to take me time and mana. Like, take turn 3, it's your whole turn to play this. Turn 6, it's still half your turn to play this guy, and he's not doing anything for me right away. If I had multiples of them in my hand, they're kind of clogging things up. So I'm going to stick with the 1 there. Sun Fury Protector, I'm probably going to take. She's well known as a fantastic rare minion. Right, 2/3 for 2, still good stats. She gives taunt to the minions on either side, and a lot of the professional players aren't that big on taunt. They consider it a little bit of a weak ability normally. You get less stats on a minion that has taunt, but when you're giving the taunt to whatever the heck you want, whatever needs it at the time, suddenly it becomes much more appealing. You can give taunt to the Gurbashi Berserker, and suddenly he's very scary, especially if he's taken damage once already, so he's a 5/6. Yeah, 5/6 who's going to grow with anything that doesn't kill him. There's just a lot of good you can do with this. With the Shaman, I could have 2 totems out other than the taunt totem. I could play her between them and give them both taunt, so even though they're just 0/2s, now my opponent's forced to deal with them. There's also this Shaman card, right? Ancestral Spirit. It's for 2 mana, you choose a minion, and when that minion is destroyed, it just comes right back. So this is very strong. If you play this on a large minion, like your opponent's going to kill it, and it's going to come right back with full hit points. It's not like there's a Paladin secret that does something similar, but it brings them back with 1 health. This brings them back with full health. Now, this doesn't trigger battle cries. Again, it's part of their game design philosophy. They don't want you to make more than 1 choice when you play a card, and they don't want you to make any choices when a card comes back. So they just don't trigger the battle cry, because it could be something like a dark battle cry that targets, and you wouldn't have control of it unless they added an extra step, an extra interaction with the player that would slow things down. What if it's your opponent's turn? You're not supposed to be taking actions on your opponent's turn. So to simplify gameplay, things don't get battle cries when they come back into play. But if they had a death rattle, they would trigger it when they died, and then this brings them back. They'll still have that death rattle to use again. So that's pretty cool. I think I'm going to take the Sun Fury Protector, though. More defense, more minions. That's what I want. But this is a very strong card. So I can get the Fairy Dragon, who we know is like 3/2 for 2 is good stats, and the fact that it can't be targeted. I mean, there aren't that many hero powers that actually target minions. Currently, just the Mage. But being immune to the Mage power is pretty good already. And then it can't be targeted by spells. That's pretty good. Oh, it would lose that ability if I could Earthshock it, but I can't, because I can't target it with spells, you know? Now, it can be targeted with battle cries, so I could play the Ironbeak Owl to silence the Fairy Dragon, and then I could target him with an Earthshock, which wouldn't need to silence him anymore, but could help kill him. So these are all very good. You know, I like the Ironbeak Owl. I mean, he's not that big for the cost, but 2/1, at least he's got the attack. And then silencing something for 2 mana is pretty darn good. You look at it, this is a card, 2 mana, silence something, and you get a 2/1 minion to go along with it. That's pretty good. Or I could Earthshock, and it's only 1 mana, it just deals 1 damage whenever I want, and silences a minion. So there's like a trade-off. Those are both good. Having more minions is better for my Bloodlust, though. So even though I want the Earthshock, and I've got spell damage in here already, and I could get more spell damage from my ability, I'm going to take the Ironbeak Owl. Okay, here's our regularly scheduled rare. This is interesting. So the Mind Control tech, I think I mentioned before. I mean, if your opponent actually has 4 or more minions, first off, that's a really bad position. You don't want to let that happen normally. But if it happens, because you don't control everything, this guy can get so much card advantage it boggles the mind, right? Because he steals one of their minions. It's at random. You don't control it, you could get their worst minion. But even then, the card advantage is huge. Because you're getting 1 card worth of stuff for himself. You're getting a 3/3 for 3 mana. And you get that even if they don't have lots of minions. You could at least get a 3/3 for 3 mana. Those are okay stats. So he's got no ability. That kind of sucks, but fine. If he triggers his ability, he's going to steal an enemy minion. That is like destroying an enemy minion, because they had a minion. Now they don't. And it's like giving you a minion, because now you do have it. So this guy gets 3-1 card advantage when he triggers his ability. Even if you get a bad minion for that, that's pretty strong. Then there's the Abomination, who is... I like him defensively. I don't know if I like him with the Shaman, because I'm trying to build up a lot of minions, and he will kill my own men. He will kill my totems and stuff. But I do like him as a card in general. I mean, 4-4 for 5 is okay. 4-4 taunt, a little better. And then when he dies, he loses 2 damage to all characters. That means that whatever your opponent kills him with, if it was larger, if it was like a 6-6, it's going to take his 4 damage from hitting him, and then another 2 damage. So he can stop one big thing, or he can stop a lot of small things. And even if they have a bunch of medium things, yeah, they'll get through him okay, but they'll all be hurt. So he's very good in general. I don't think for this deck so much. Master Swordsmith is interesting, though, because the 1-3 for 2, okay, he's a little tough. He doesn't have much attack, but that's okay. He will give attack to your other things. If you have another minion when you play him, you're going to get +1 attack to that minion at the end of the turn for sure. He targets a random friendly minion other than himself, so you do have to have something else out. If you have more than 2 guys beside him, then he's picking one at random, maybe not the one you want. But still, I think I'm going to take him because he can give my totems attack bonuses, and that'll be useful. Like, it should be very easy for me to have other things out for him. I think my opponent will really want to kill this guy. So I can get another Bloodlust, which is great as a kill card. I'm not sure that how many I want in here. Like, I'd like to have 2 in practice. Probably not more than that. It'd be too much. I'd need more stuff to actually be minions. But we've got other choices here. The Frost Shock is similar to the Earth Shock, obviously, as you guessed, because it's called something Shock. It's 1 mana for 1 damage, just like Earth Shock, but instead of silencing a minion, it freezes it. So the Earth Shock is great against something with a special ability, especially a Death Rattle, like the Loot Hoarder, where you get rid of that and it dies. Or something that has abilities buffing it. The Earth Shock is amazing because it'll remove all the hit points from buffs and then do 1 damage. This is good against a minion that is just big and fat with no abilities, right? If they have an Ogre out, the 6-7 for 6, Frost Shock won't kill it for sure, because that thing's got 1,000,000 hit points. But it does 1 damage, so it's helping to wear it down. That's 2 damage if you had spell damage out. But it freezes it, so that Ogre is going to lose a whole turn of attacking. And if you stop your opponent's biggest minion from attacking for 1 turn, that can make a huge difference in the game, right there. So it tends to get played less than Earthshock from what I've seen. I mean, I haven't seen that many people playing Shamans. Maybe it's different at the high level, I don't know. But I feel like it sees less play than Earthshock, but it's still pretty strong, particularly in the arena. I think I have to take the Stormforged Axe, though. It's 2 mana plus an overload of 1. So if you play this on your 2nd turn, your 3rd turn you're only going to have 2 mana again. That's not great. You could coin this out 1st turn, but then next turn you only have 1 mana, which kind of blows and makes you wonder what you did with your coin. But this thing deals 2 damage 3 times. So if you were just hitting your opponent directly, you're getting 6 damage for that 3 mana, spread out over time. More likely and much more valuable, you can kill 2 or even 3 of your enemy's minions, like small minions, especially early in the game, with this axe. You'll take damage in the process because you're making a weapon attack every time, but if this 1 card kills 3 minions, if this kills your enemy Loot Hoarder, and then their Geomancer, and then their Ironbeak Owl, you have gotten so much card advantage out of this thing, it is mind-boggling. So I think I'm going to risk taking this. I'm going to hope I get another Bloodlust later, but I really want to have at least 1 Stormforged Axe in here. Okay, so we got the Windfury Harpy, who, again, I'm saying I need to give her more credit as a fat thing, because late in the game, if you play her, it's late in the game. She's kind of expensive. She's not that tough for 6 mana, but she's not bad. The only reason it feels like she's fragile is because Windfury lets her attack twice. If she attacks 2 minions, those 5 hit points are going to disappear really fast. But if you're not attacking minions, if you can use everything else to get rid of the minions and use her to attack the enemy hero, she does 8 damage a turn. An 8-5 for 6, and anything that buffs her damage is doubled, right? Because she's getting to attack twice. So if she's next to a Dire Wolf, she's a 5-5 that gets to attack twice. She's going to do 10 damage to your opposing hero. She is actually strong. Should give her more credit. And of course, with Bloodlust, she's just crazy Bloodlust harpy. Now the Dust Devil does almost as much damage as her, and he only costs 1 mana. He must be amazing, right? I find him not very good at all. Because here's what happens. First off, he has 1 hit point. 1 hit point is really fragile. Even first turn, 1 hit point is not that tough. You can get Earth Shocked, you can get Frost Shocked, Lightning Bolted, and other classes. Like, there are a million things that can kill him for 1 damage. They could play the Boars that are a 1/1 charge for 1. They could play the Elf that's a 1/1 who does 1 damage when she comes into play. She costs 1. Also, if you go first, you play him. If you went first, your opponent has the coin. So they can use any of their 1 or 2 mana cards to kill him, and they will. Because if for some reason they couldn't kill this guy, he does 6 damage a turn to them, which is fantastic. Or if you had to, you do 3 damage to your opponent, and then you do 3 damage and kill one of their minions, and he dies. But he's so risky because he's not 1 mana. He's 1 mana with an overload of 2. So if you play this guy first turn, your second turn, you have no mana. 0. You are going to play nothing on your second turn, unless you had the coin or whatever. But yeah, you play him, you're locking 2 mana for next turn. So you're guaranteeing that your next turn you will have less mana than you had the turn you played him, even later in the game. But also, even if he gets killed right away, if you play this guy and you're like, haha, and then your opponent goes and they play like Elf, do 1 damage to him, he's dead, that mana is still locked. Overload happens when you cast him. It doesn't matter what happens to him afterwards. You're still going to have, these little locks will come down and lock out 2 of your mana for your next turn. So he's a huge gamble early in the game. Technically, like if you go second, if your opponent goes first and they do something you don't care about, they do something that's not a minion, right? And then your turn, you go first and you go coin 2 Dust Devils. If your opponent, for some reason, they just have a bad hand or a slow hand, they can't do anything about that, you're going to hit them for 12 damage on turn 3. There's probably nothing they can do about it. But there's a much bigger chance that they will have something they can do about your 1 or 2 of your Dust Devils, and you're just going to be losing a whole bunch of turns, and they'll die and not do much. I'm not a big fan of this guy, and as far as I know, there's no way to give him charge as a shaman. All the things that give charge so far are class-specific for other classes. So, without a way to just give him charge, I don't find this guy too much use. I mean, you could protect him. You could have a bunch of taunt out and make it very hard for your opponent to get to him, but even then, there's a high risk they'll just do 1 damage to him somehow. 3 of the different classes have a way to do 1 damage built into their character, right? You go first turn, Dust Devil. Your opponent, if they're a mage or a rogue or a druid, they spend their coin, they use their hero ability, the mage shoots them, the druid or the rogue would arm themselves basically and attack him. They take 3 once, but that's it, and you lost 2 mana for next turn. It's a good deal for them, even if they have to use the coin. So, no, I'm not a big fan of him. Stop wasting time on it. River Croc at 2/3, I like him. Like, he's not that good, because, again, he's a beast, and that's like a waste. He could have had an ability if he wasn't a beast. But, in a lot of situations, he still works out well. A 2/3 for 2, like, on a second turn, is a good play, most of the time. But I already have a lot of strong 2-mana plays, or at least decent 2-mana plays. I'm going to take the Harpy because I need more of that fatness for later in the game. And again, with a Shaman, there are a few ways I might be able to buff her. I much prefer to have cards that give Wind Fury to a minion and give it to something better, because you pay a lot of stat points for your mana. Like, you lose a lot of the stat points you would normally get in order to have Wind Fury built in. But she's still pretty big. Shaman is the only class that can give Wind Fury to stuff. There are a couple cards that do that. Hopefully we'll see them. But for now, the Voodoo Doctor, we know 2/1 for 1 is fine. Healing 2 to something, that's pretty cool. The Raging Worgen is a crazy psycho. If you can find a way to do damage to him, preferably just 1 damage, and not kill him, then he can go off and do 8 damage a turn. which is to your opponent, which is insane. Or he could hit your opponent for 4 and then hit like one of their minions for 4 and then die. He's really strong if he can get that going. But 3/3 for 3, your opponent will usually find some way to kill him before that. Or you can easily get in a situation where all your opponent's minions are of sufficient size. You have no way to get him damaged without killing him. Like, if he just goes and kills the Cult Master, killing a Cult Master is great, but you didn't get the crazy Raging Worgen power that you were hoping for. You just got a 3/3 for 3. The Cult Master is the one I'm going to take because I'm playing a Shaman, and this is a higher chance of working out than normal, okay? So he's 4 mana, he's a little fragile, he doesn't have that many stats, although, I mean, he's very aggressive. For 4 mana, a minion that does 4 damage is great, it's just that he's super fragile for that cost. But whenever one of your other minions dies, he makes you draw a card. So preferably you play him just before attacking with some minions. Then you do some exchanges where your minion dies, but so does your opponent's minion. Only you're drawing cards to replace them, and it's fantastic. And, I mean, if I have some taunt to protect him on my opponent's turn, they might not be able to get to him right away. If they have to go through like a taunt totem or some other junk to get to him, I'm going to draw cards for that too. Anytime I'm drawing cards for my totems dying, it's fantastic. Like if I have a couple totems between the direwolf, like around the direwolf, so they can attack, and then I play down a Cult Master, attack with those totems, even if they don't kill anything, it's just the totems die and give me cards. Awesome. So we're going to take him. He has a chance to go really far. Do I take another Cult Master, which is tempting, or the Tiger? I mean, the Tiger, 5/5 for 5, perfectly reasonable stats, and then Stealth means it's very, very hard for your opponent to kill this guy until he's attacked once. So he's like a very slow charge, is one way you could think of him. If he was a charge minion, he'd be much more fragile. But instead he has the Stealth, which doesn't hurt him as much in terms of the build points or however they like figure out how big cards can be for their cost. So he gets to be a lot bigger for his cost than if he had charge, but he doesn't actually do it right away. Your opponent has warning that he's coming, and it does take that extra time delay, but they have a hard time stopping him, because even things that do damage randomly usually don't do 5 damage. That's a lot to do with area of effect or with random cards. So usually they can't attack him either until he breaks stealth by dealing damage. So he's pretty good. The Earthshock, again, I would like to have more direct damage. And I'm already halfway through my deck almost. I don't have as many direct damage spells as I would like. So the Earthshock's really tempting. So is the Cult Master, because he's another Cult Master and they can be crazy. I'm going to take the Earthshock. Probably dumb, but I wanted to have that. I still don't like Stormpike Commando so much. I'm hoping I see some Fire Elementals. The more Fire Elementals, the more likely you are to win the arena, is usually how it seems to go. I don't like you that much. See, this is where you get you start comparing the minions that make more minions when they come into play. So he costs 2 more mana. You should get a lot more for that. And this gives you 7 points of stats. He gives you 12. Right? Like a 4/4 and a 2/2. His just seem distributed better, though. Like, the 2/2 is able to survive 1 damage, which is useful in a lot of circumstances. It deals 2 damage on its own, so it can kill some things, like it can kill a Stormpike Commando. It's just an okay amount of damage. And then he's a 4/4, which is not horrible for 5 mana. I mean, you get a 4/4 for 5, it better have a good ability, while another whole 2/2 minion is a pretty good ability. And it should work out well with my other, my Bloodlust or Direwolf-based plans. So we're gonna take him. He's pretty solid. Could get a Spellbreaker. I do like getting a minion with my Silence. Or an Earthshock or a Lightning Bolt. Even though the Lightning Bolt has Overload, I think I'd rather have another Lightning Bolt, because it just does so much more damage. There are a lot of circumstances where you'd rather have an Earthshock. I mean, a minion that's been buffed, the Earthshock will almost always be better. But Lightning Bolt is good for killing your opponent, and Earthshock doesn't actually kill your opponent. Even if it did, it would only be 1 damage. 3 damage is good. I don't need to silence it if it's dead. So another Dust Devil, I don't like you too much. Frost Shock, might be worth taking a Frost Shock, but I think I'm going to take the Silver Moon Guardian. He's not my favorite in terms of how his stats are distributed, but he's a 3/3 for 4. It's a little bit small, but he's got Divine Shield, which is worth a lot. It's like he's a 3/6 or something. He might as well, because that first hit, I mean, if it's a 1 damage hit, then it breaks his bubble and it was kind of a waste. But if the first thing it hits him does 3 or 4 or more damage, that bubble was amazing, and he was actually a very good value for the cost. The reason I don't find him that good, like, he'd be better if he was a 4-2, which I don't normally say. You know, I'd normally rather have the stats closer together, or if anything, more defense. But because he's got that bubble, having less defense doesn't matter as much, whereas having more attack would be very useful for him. But I'm going to take him just because I'm sort of favoring minions over spells. But I mean, another Frost Shock would not be bad. Okay, Wisp is still, like, it's 0 cost. Unless you have some things that benefit from, like, every spell you cast in a turn, or every card you play in a turn, she's not a spell. Every card you play in a turn, she's really not doing much for you. You'd have to have some kind of combo. Earth Shock is good, but we're going to take the Abusive Sergeant because, again, the totems can't attack. Most of the, like, 3 of the 4 totems are a 0-2, they don't do much. But sometimes people will leave them alone because of that. If you have a 0-2 totem that's been out for at least a turn, you can cast the Abusive Sergeant, give +2 attack to that totem, and now that totem can attack, because minions with 0 attack can't, but now it can, and it can hopefully kill an enemy minion using just a totem, right? These are very expendable. I still think a summoner ability is usually worth about a third of a card. So that's pretty good use of a third of a card. If it can kill, if a third of a card plus his ability, so it's like half of a card, can kill something, that's pretty good. He's still a 2-1 for 1. He's like cheap and efficient. Okay, here's some more interesting stuff. We've got the Worgen Infiltrator. It's just like I was talking about stealth before. I mean, this thing is very unlikely to die before it attacks. Now, it's not as unlikely to die as the huge Tiger, because he's only a 1-mana creature, so there are a lot of area spells that will do 1 damage and kill him. But he can't be targeted by attacks or other things until he goes. Now, he could be killed by a random targeting thing, like Fork Lightning. But yeah, he's quite good if he can sit there and, for 1 mana, he can do his 2 damage and kill an enemy minion, or he can start doing it to the hero unmolested for his first turn of life, usually. Fork Lightning, this is 2 damage to 2 enemy minions for 1 mana. That is a lot of death that you're dispensing, especially if you have spell power. Suddenly you're getting 3 mana to 2 targets for only, or 3 damage to 2 targets for only 1 mana. That's really strong. But it's got that overload of 2 again. Now, I like this a lot better than I like that little elemental with the 1 toughness. They can't kill your Fork Lightning. Your Fork Lightning is going to go off, so you're going to get what you paid for, unless your opponent had more than 2 minions and the random goes badly. But even then, you did a bunch of damage for that 1 mana. The overload of 2 means this is kind of a really bad way to kill things early in the game. It looks like it should be the best way to kill things early in the game, right? If your opponent gets out 2 minions and probably like a 3-2 and a 2-1, you're like, haha, for only 1 mana I blow them both up. That's pretty fantastic, but early in the game, the overload of 2 tends to screw you up badly. Like, it messes up your mana curve. Because you want to spend 1 mana on your first turn, 2 mana on your second turn. Your third turn, you want to play something that costs 3. Your fourth turn, you want to play something that costs 4, because that's how you get as big a thing out as you possibly can for that turn of the game. 2 points of overload messes that up a lot. 1 from the lightning bolt can mess up your curve, but it's not as bad. 2 early in the game, it's a lot like missing a turn. Especially if you don't have any minions out that can attack. It's really like missing a turn then. But I like the Fork Lightning in other ways. I like it later in the game, which seems kind of odd. I mean, it's like it's a 1 mana card. What good is it later in the game? This is way better than most 1 mana cards later in the game. So turn 6 or 7 or something, if you play a minion or a combination of minions that cost 1 less than your amount of mana, and you Fork Lightning and blow up some stuff on the other side, you can get a lot of value for that 1 mana. And later in the game, the 2 overload still hurts, like it prevents you from doing the next thing, but maybe you've been using all the cards in your hand. If you don't have a lot of really expensive things, and I don't, that can work out really well. Just that later in the game, playing almost all of your mana worth of stuff, and then using just 1 mana to do this much damage can be a lot. It can make the difference. So it's very tempting. Windspeaker is also very tempting. He's a 3/3 for 4, which is a little bit behind the curve, but he gives a friendly minion Wind Fury. See, he's giving the ability to attack twice to any the hell minion you want. You know, the Gurubashi Berserker really likes being able to attack twice, because it means he can use his first attack and kill your opponents like Direwolf Alpha. So he takes 2 damage, and it's not great, but he gets +3 attack. Then he uses his second attack to either kill something huge or deal 5 damage to their hero. That's amazing. And of course, if he survived to the next turn, he's already buffed. Now he's getting 2 attacks. There's huge, crazy. So when you give Wind Fury to another minion that is already good, you tend to get something much more powerful than what you get for the cost of a minion that has Wind Fury built in. Especially since this is a neutral minion and they have a little bit less budget for stats than your class-specific cards. So I'm really torn. I'd like that Fork Lightning for that late-game clutch play, you know, play a whole bunch of stuff and then, boom, blow up your opponent's important minions and let you get through and whatever. I think I gotta take the Windspeaker, though, because he doesn't have the overload for stuff. He's a minion, and he's giving me geometric power. Hopefully I'll have some more things that can have a big attack. I do need some more fatness now, is what I'm going to start looking for. He's best on fat things, and right now I don't have that much that's fat. One of my fat already has Wind Fury, but he's still very strong. So, Ancient Watcher benefits a lot from the Sun Fury Protector, right? Because, I mean, he can't attack, he's a useless piece of crap, unless you can do something. But if you play a Defender of Argus next to him, now he's a 5/6 taunt. He can't attack, but your opponent has to get through him to get to you. I don't have the Defender of Argus, I can't take him and this, because they're in the same row, but I do have the Sun Fury Protector. So, second turn, play an Ancient Watcher. Third turn, play a Sun Fury Protector. And your opponent's early game minions are going to have a really hard time breaking through the Ancient Watcher. Or, the other choice is play him second turn, and then third turn, play the Ironbeak Owl, silence him. He loses the ability to not have the ability to attack. Apparently 2 wrongs make a right, because suddenly he's a real 4/5 Yeti-like creature. So, he could be good. It's funny, I actually have the tools to do that. It'd be worth Earthshocking him, right? If I had more Earthshocks, I might even take him, because Earthshock him, he takes 1 damage, that sucks, doing 1 to my own minion, but then he's a 4/4 who can attack, which is pretty good for his cost. Defender of Argus is very good, boosts my totems and stuff like that, but I was complaining I need more fat stuff, and the Argent Commander has 4 attack, and he can survive 1 hit from anything. He's pretty amazing with the charge. So you can come out and charge, and then if he lived to the next turn, or if I had 10 mana, I could Windspeaker him and give him the ability to attack twice. Like, late in the game, that would be a really powerful play. 10 mana turn, go Argent Commander, Windspeaker him, attack twice with the Argent Commander. Wow. We're going to take him, he's very good. There's a Fire Elemental. There's also the Spiteful Smith, who, again, he's a little bit more expensive than Yeti. I had a chance to take him in some earlier games, but this deck actually has a weapon. So you notice, because the axe doesn't have very high attack, but it gets to attack lots of times. 3 times is a lot of uses for a weapon. And if I'm getting +2 attack from him 3 times, that's a 4 attack weapon. That's a lot of attacks. I'm getting a lot of extra damage his Enrage would give me. But no, we're taking the Fire Elemental because he is huge. 3 damage is enough to blow up a lot of minions when they come into play. He can blow up almost anything that is wounded, and a lot of things he can blow them up from full health with 3 damage. And then what you have left is a huge fat minion. Like a 6/5 for 6 is almost worth it without the ability. And his ability is amazing. His ability is a whole Lightning Bolt, which I pay like 1 mana and Overload another mana for. He's amazing. Really good. He can deal that 3 damage to your opponent if you just need to kill your opponent faster. And he's also a great target for the Windspeaker. They're like a natural partnership there. If you get the Fire Elemental out and he survives for a turn, which can happen because he's got 5 toughness, he's pretty chunky, then you Windspeaker him and you're doubling 6 attack. It's geometric and sick. So we're going to take him. If every other card that came along was a fire elemental, I would probably take them all. But it helps that I already have the cheap side of my deck pretty much covered. I do need some more middle game type stuff. Now the Engineer would draw me another card, that would be good. The Infiltrator's kind of, he is pretty cool, but I usually end up taking other stuff instead of him, even though he's cool and I think he's good. I'm going to take the Ogre Magi because I have a few damage dealing spells, and I kind of feel like I need more of that 4-cost strong stuff. Now, 4/4 for 4 is okay stats. It's not, I mean, it's actually pretty good stats. You usually don't get more than that. He just looks weaker compared to the Yeti, who actually does get more stats, because he doesn't have an ability at all. And the Yeti's just really efficient. Yetis eat Ogre Magi and survive, but the Ogre Magi makes all my spells better, so I'll take it. Now here we got a choice. The Argent Squire, I mean, if you have things to buff it, it gets more use out of the buff. Because it's not a 1/1, it's like a 1x+1, where x is however much damage the first attack deals to it. If all your opponent has is big sources of damage, they're going to have to waste a big source of damage, or just ignore this at their own peril. But the Tide Hunter, again, I was comparing minions that give you another minion. When you're only paying 2 mana for it, that 1/1 seems like another whole minion. It's still 3/2 worth of stats for 2 mana, but having it split up like that does give you the advantage of they work better with Direwolves and Bloodlust and stuff like that. I did want more fat, though. I'm kind of torn now. I got a little bit more fat. I still want more. He's not my favorite, even though I've been singing his praises the whole time. He always sounds really good because you can envision all kinds of things happening with his ability that are fantastic. You can't count on those things happening, though. He's still a 2/7, vulnerable to silence. Silence turns him into that turtle I don't like very much. And it takes some effort to get his ability working no matter what. Tempted to take the Tide Hunter. It gives me more early game strength, because he is pretty darn strong early game, and in late game, he can work with the Bloodlust. I only have one Bloodlust, though. I don't know. I'm going to take him anyway and hope that I get more fat minions I can take. We know Acid Ooze is good, 3/2 for 2, and he blows up your opponent's weapon. Only like a third or almost half of your opponents might have weapons. Some classes are much less likely to, based on the rarity of their weapons. But against half of the classes, he can do something really great. But, I don't know. Frost Shock, I have a couple sources of spell damage now, plus my ability, so, it could do a bunch. And freezing something is a really useful ability, even though it tends to get knocked compared to Earthshock. But I really wanted more 4 mana, fighting minions, and 3/5 for 4 is very good fighting stats, plus he's got Taunt to help protect some of my other weird things that need protecting. Here are some really good examples of Shaman stuff. So he's a neutral card, he's not a Shaman minion, so he would be better if he was a Shaman minion. Ironically, the Farseer is not. But because he has Wind Fury built in, his stats kind of suck. A 2/3 is good stats for 2 mana. For 3, you want more. And the thing is, Wind Fury, he has to attack twice. That's awesome. So he's kind of like a 4/3, right? But he's not that tough. He's going to die really fast if he tries to hit 2 different minions. And his attack's not that high. Unless you have a way to boost it, he's not getting very good use out of that doubling effect, out of the geometric bonus that he has. Now, I mean, if you have any way to boost him, if he's next to the Flame Tongue Totem, which I'm taking, by the way, Flame Tongue Totem gives 2 attack to the adjacent minions. It's kind of like the Shaman's class-specific version of the Direwolf. The Direwolf is a 2/2, and then he gives +1 to the adjacent guys, which is very good. And this has the same number of stats as the Direwolf, right? Plus, it's actually it has less. Math. It has less stats than the Direwolf, and it's tough and that's nice, but it can't attack at all on its own. But it gives twice the bonus. So it and the Direwolf both give potentially 4, they both put 4 attack on the table. But the Direwolf itself has to do some of that attacking. the Flame Tongue sends everyone else out to as its minions to, do the dirty work for it. And it works super well with totems, and it works super well with Wind Fury. Like, this guy, I'm saying he's not that great, but if my opponent ignored him for one turn, and then next turn when he's able to attack, I play a Flame Tongue next to him, now he's got 2 attacks at 4 damage, and he's doing as much as the Crazy Harpy. He can do 8 damage to my opponent. That's crazy. It's not because he's amazing, it's because the Flame Tongue totem is amazing. And you have to remember, with the totems and stuff like that, just like the Direwolf Alpha, it's positional. It means if you have 2 things to the left of this, right, I attack with the first one, and it dies, the next thing will collapse inward, right? It always fills in the gaps in your formation, which means the next thing is now adjacent to it, so it now gets the bonus, which means you can get this +2 attack bonus more than just twice per turn. You can potentially get it lots of times if the things keep dying, which may be well worthwhile. So anyway, we're taking a Flame Tongue totem. It's amazing. We've got the Patriarch I don't like too much. The Brewmaster, picking guys up using their battle cries again is pretty awesome. I don't feel like I have that many battle cries in here. I mean, there are always a bunch. The Ironbeak Owl could silence again. Tidehunter could make a new guy. So could the the Silver Hand. He could get his bubble back. I mean, the Fire Elemental could get to shoot again, but he is kind of expensive to be bouncing and playing again. It'd only be worth it if he was damaged, right? If he was beat up. I think, given this situation, I'm probably going to actually take the Berserker instead. I really kind of want more fat things in here. I don't know, my deck's gotten fatter though. I'm still going to hold out for bigger fat things. I'm going to take the Brewmaster. He does give you some flexibility. Rockbiter Weapon is a really interesting card. When I first started playing this game, and I'm sure you have the same experience, you look at this, and then you look at Lightning Bolt, and you're like, Lightning Bolt, deal 3 damage to anything you want. Rockbiter, give a friendly character, which could be your hero or any minion, +3 attack until end of turn. Isn't the Lightning Bolt just better? Because to do that 3 damage to a minion, the Rockbiter means either you with your hero are going to take that minion's damage, or whatever minion you give the +3 attack to is going to have to take damage to attack something. Lightning Bolt, you just Lightning Bolt something. No, your stuff doesn't have to take any damage back. Yeah, it costs a little more with the overload, but Rockbiter Weapon is a combo card because, remember, Shaman is the class that gets Wind Fury. So whatever I have, if the Wind Speaker gives the Fire Elemental Wind Fury, it's already doing 12 damage to my opponent. If I Rockbiter a minion with Wind Fury, like the Fire Elemental, I'm getting double that +3 attack. I'm getting 6 damage for 1 mana, which gets crazy. But before I accidentally click it, I'm going to take the Fire Elemental because that's really what I need. Fire Elemental kind of beats everything, as far as I'm concerned, in the arena especially. So, I don't have enough Murlocs to benefit from this guy. You really, it's pretty dubious trying to put Murlocs together in the arena, because not only are you unlikely to get enough of them to stack up their bonuses right, but a lot of them give bonuses to all Murlocs. This includes your opponent's Murlocs. If your opponent plays a Murloc Tidehunter, then you don't want to play this guy because you're boosting his stuff more than your own, probably. The Cult Master is really strong if you get him going. If you play him and then do a bunch of trades and draw a million cards while killing your opponent's stuff, the card advantage is huge and you probably win. I think I'm going to take the Scarlet Crusader as a better fighting sort of minion. I don't have a lot of 3-cost minions either. I've got a real hole in my casting cost curve. And I mean, she's just like the Silver Moon Guardian for 1 less mana. Sure, he can take some little weak hits after losing his bubble, and she can't. But she's at least going to take 2 damage to kill from 2 different sources. Often, your opponent's going to end up using more damage than that to kill her. So, she just usually works out really well. Almost at the end here, and I've just got a bonus rare. My next card's got to be a rare or better, because it's the last card. But I got a bonus one here. Oh, it's interesting. We get the Mind Control Tech again, which, again, if I'm not killing my opponent's stuff, 3-to-1 card advantage. And if you can't set up that situation, you still get a 3/3 for 3. It's not bad. The Twilight Drake is often as good as a Yeti, and sometimes better, but it's also sometimes worse. It for 4 mana, I mean, it always has 4 attack, and it gets +1 health for every card in your hand when you cast it. So that doesn't count itself. If you have 4 cards in your hand, one of them is the Twilight Drake, you play the Twilight Drake, it's going to get +3 health, so it's going to end up with 4 health. It's going to be a 4/4 for 4, which seems kind of mediocre. But there are situations, if you've been just sitting around making totems, like, a lot of shamans prioritize making totems over playing other cards. As long as your opponent keeps having to spend effort killing them, you can get a lot of advantage by it. You can save up your cards where your opponent's spending cards to kill it. You're hopefully getting 2-to-1s on killing their minions with your stuff, whatever. And then you save up cards in your hand. Now the Twilight Drake could be huge if I'd spent half my turns before that drawing a card and then just making a totem instead. And I don't know, it's like using your totems is very good. He could work out well with that. It's not too hard for him to come out as a 4/6 or a 4/7, which is amazing. Well, 4/7 you got a lot of cards in your hand, but it can happen. And even if he's like 4/4, you're not really getting hosed. He's still fine. The funniest thing with him is Earthshock. Remember, Earthshock silences first, then deals 1 damage. He only has 1 hit point that doesn't come from a buff. His card text gives him all the rest of his hit points. So it doesn't matter if he's a 4/11. If your opponent, or I don't even think that's possible. If he's a 4/10, because your opponent had a full hand of 10 cards, you played this guy, he comes out as a 4/10. Earthshock will say, card text gone, you're a 4/1, and then deal 1 damage. It dies. So Earthshock, it just is a humorous side effect of the way it works out, will kill a Twilight Drake in 1 spell, always. Pretty much always. I mean, if it was buffed some other way, it would still die. And you could run into weird situations where that might not be true. I think, like, with the Alchemists switching stats, crazy things could happen. But anyway, the other one we've got here is the Imp Master, who is also pretty interesting, right? 1/5 for 3 is very tough for the mana. I think we saw this in the Priest game I had. I can't just heal her as reliably as the Priest, but I might get the Healing Totem. It comes out pretty often because it's usually not the one I want. It would negate her 1 damage to herself every turn, allowing her to keep summoning imps forever. And if I make a lot of imps, that Bloodlust is going to be stronger. I only have the 1 Bloodlust now. I've got 2 things that buff minions on adjacent sides, which is pretty good. But I have a bunch of things that can buff minions. Having a lot of little 1/1s could be useful. Between these, I think I'm going to take the Imp Master. I'm also short of 3-cost minions, so that doesn't hurt. And my final rare, see, it gave me all that bonus rare, and then it faked me out. I've got crap. I've got a Murloc, gives bonus health to all other Murlocs, including opponent Murlocs, and he's not good. The Angry Chicken, who's, like, it's just there to be kind of a silly card. Theoretically, you could do stuff with it, because its Enrage is +5. If this thing has taken any damage and is not dead, it has +5 attack. It has Gargantuan attack for minion you only paid 1 for. The problem with that is it only has 1 health, right? So first you have to buff its health somehow. Then it has to take damage, but not as much damage as it has health. So it has to gain health, then take damage, still be alive, and then it will have +5 attack. This is not worth trying to do, basically. I mean, you could try, I guess, in a Hunter deck, because there's that Master of the Hunt, or, sorry, is that what he's called? Whatever, Hound Master or something. A 4/3 for 4 that gives +2 attack and +2 health and taunt to any beast. Well, the chicken does count as a beast, so you could buff him with the Hound Master, turn it into a 3/3 and then if it takes damage somehow, we get the +5 Enrage. That's a long way to go just to cross the road. So, it's not worth it. The Ancestral Spirit is definitely the choice out of these. It's not my favorite card, but I mean, if like my 6/5 comes back, he doesn't get his Battlecry again, but if he dies in the line of duty and then comes back as a 6/5, especially if it happens on my opponent's turn, so he'll be able to attack again on my turn, that's pretty awesome. If one of my bubble minions comes back, because Battle Cries don't trigger, but Divine Shield does. So if that triggers on the Argent Commander, he would come back and get his bubble back. So with the Silver Moon Guardian and the Scarlet Crusader, it could be interesting. We'll see how it goes. So I only got 2 Fire Elementals, but that's as many as a constructed deck has, and they are still awesome. So now that's the slow part of my beginner series videos. Now I'm going to try and play the game at normal speed and see how far I can get in the arena. Shaman is a very good class. I think my deck is average to not that special, basically, as far as arena shamans go. I have had and been up against crazy arena shamans. There's always some jerk that gets 5 fire elementals, and guess what? If you get up to 10 or 11 wins, you're going to be playing against some jerk that has 5 fire elementals, and 2 wind speakers, and 3 flame tongue totems. And you're going to be like, what is going on? Oh, speaking of loser that probably has a better shaman deck than me, this guy. Okay, these are both good starting hand type things. I don't really want the Manatide Totem in my starting hand. I think there's too much risk of it dying, and it's not likely to accomplish anything. Although it will replace itself. So Squelch him. I'm not going to cast Lightning Bolt on him. That would be stupid. I need to keep that flexibility. Late in the game, you can burn down your opponent. It's fantastic. But until they're near death, I'm much better off using this to kill a minion. See, if this had been that 3-1 with Wind Fury, it would be dead, and I would have no mana next turn. Alright. Now, here's a funny thing. This deck, I know I have very few 3-mana minions. So if I play the Stormforged Axe now, the Overload is going to stop me from getting my 3rd mana next turn. It only blocks it for 1 turn. Like, the turn after that, I will have 4 mana as normal. I'm unlikely to get anything that's unlikely to stop me from playing anything other than playing one of these 2-cost guys and the Lightning Bolt. So I can pretty safely play this now without being hosed by the Overload. That's something you've got to think about. And I have lots of 2-cost choices to play the turn after. So I think I'm going to do that. It's tempting to play one of my 2/2 minions first, because she alone can't kill them. She needs another card to kill them. So it'd be worth the risk normally. But if I play the Stormforged Axe the turn after that, it would be stopping me from having 4 mana on my 4-mana turn, which is a turn when I could play 2 things, a totem and a thing. There are a lot of things. The 3-mana turn is the one I want that Overload. So I'm actually going to play this. I'm going to waste 1 attack killing the 1/1. It's still good to keep the board clear, that she can't be buffed by something now, or who knows what other problems I could run into. He'll probably make a totem, and then I'll probably use this to kill his totem.
I hope you like my invention.
Ah, he's playing another 1/1. I don't know if I want to waste another use from this on a 1/1. Could just make a totem. In fact, because she's a 1/1, that's what I'm going to do. If I get as long as I get one of the 0/2 totems, this won't be able to kill it. If it's a 1/1, they can trade, that's fine. Oh, I've got spell damage totem, so this would do 4 damage if I played it right now. So he's got a choice. He's got to either waste effort killing this, or ignore it and risk me doing something crazy that involves a lot of spell damage. No, he's got his own, too. Interesting. This guy plays a lot of cheap 1/1s, which works really well if he's got lots of Bloodlust and Flame Tongue totems, but normally for deck design, I consider that pretty bad. So let's see. Oh, the Earth Shock, which would actually do 2 damage. It's kind of funny. What am I going to do? Here's an interesting thing. Remember I said you can't make 2 of the same totem. I mean, there are odd circumstances where you can do that. Like if you return a totem to your hand, it doesn't count towards the limit. I'm pretty sure. But if I silence his Wrath of Air totem, it won't make another Wrath of Air totem because he has one in play. But he still won't have the spell damage, which is kind of funny. It feels like it would be worth using this to blow that up, but my mana situation wouldn't work out evenly. I'm going to play this guy and give +1 attack to my totem because it can kill one of the 1/1s. And then I got to decide what to do other than that. I'm going to do that now while I'm thinking, because that play is not going to change. I'm going to kill you because you could draw another card if you got returned to hand or something. Then, if I waste a use on my weapon and kill that, then it can't kill my totem. Which does seem kind of nice. I'm going to do that just to protect my battlefield advantage here. It's probably dumb. This means that if he has any area damage, it'll kill everything. But I'm just going to make another totem. It's worth noting that when you make a minion from this ability or from like Paladin one, it always appears on the right of your formation. So you got to plan your positioning accordingly. If I'd put this on the other side of my Wrath of Air totem, then the new totem I made wouldn't be getting the bonus. The taunt totem is pretty good. Giving it +1 attack means that it's actually going to wear down anything that hits it, whereas normally it stops an attack, but it doesn't accomplish anything other than slowing them down. So that guy is very tough. I could do 4 damage to him with the lightning bolt. I could play this guy and then do 5 damage with the lightning bolt and then finish him off with this. That's pretty good. Or I finish him off with my axe. I might want to save the axe. I don't have any other weapons. The only risk of saving it is that he plays an acid ooze, basically. I've got 5 mana, so I could play this guy and it would be kind of amazing, but I think I want to get rid of that thing. And I think I want to do it with like crazy lightning boltness, so I'm going to do that. Now the fact that using the lightning bolt, it has 1 overload, so it means I won't be able to play the fire elemental next turn. That's a drawback. Significant one, but I have lots of things to play, so I'm not too worried about that. Let's play this guy here. And we're going to lightning bolt him. And I hate to use this guy's toughness, because now my guys are all pretty fragile. And then we're going to kill that with those, and make another totem, because why not? These totems are not costing me cards, so I'm getting more cards in my hand, but my forces have been winning, so I have the advantage. If I got Bloodlust right now, and he doesn't have an area spell on his turn, this would be 15, plus 15 damage from these guys. I would actually hit for like 20-something. It would be insane. It's interesting that he played the totem before playing him. If he had played the Knife Juggler first, making the totem would have done 1 random damage to my side. Makes me think that if he had gotten a different totem, there was something that costs 3 mana that he wanted to play. Maybe if he got a taunt totem, he wanted to play the 0/3 draw you cards totem. I don't know. Anyway, I definitely want to kill him. He's very dangerous. He's a dangerous man. It's probably worth my axe, actually. I have so many minions out. I don't know if I want to put any more, because if there are any area spells, it's going to kill everything. But, yeah, so I'm going to use my axe to kill him, because I don't want to lose one of my minions doing it. And I'm going to kill his totem, because I don't want him to build up totems. If he has a Flame Tongue totem, he plays it next to that, that thing can kill one of my things. That's no good. So, I'm going to hit him. Okay, he's going to surrender because I'm playing too slow, because I'm talking to you. There's a lot of thinking to do, though. I had a lot of options there. But yeah, my forces got a little out of control. He probably didn't have any area damage. You know what? I don't have any area damage spells. That's a risk. That's going to hurt me later on. Hey, I unlocked a Golden Wind Fury for my constructed decks. But yeah, that's one of the problems with the Shaman is their area of effect damage. There's the Forked Lightning, which I ended up not taking, because that has that crazy overload, and it's just 2 targets at random. The other drawback to the Forked Lightning, the other reason I didn't take it is, if they only have 1 minion, you can't play it. It's 2 targets at random. If they have less than 2 targets, you can't play it. If they have more than 2 targets, then you can't rely on it, because it's random which ones it'll hit. If they have exactly 2 targets, then you know exactly where it's going to go, and it's kind of awesome. But they have that, and then they have Lightning Storm, which costs 3, has an overload of 2. So it's costing you 5 mana over 2 turns. But it's worth it, because it's their area spell. It does 2 damage to all enemy minions, and then for each enemy minion, there's a 50-50 chance that it does 1 extra damage. So it says it does 2 to 3 damage to enemy minions. It goes through, for each one it flips a coin, and based on the result of the coin flip, it either does 2 or 3 damage. But it does at least 2 damage to all enemies, which is pretty good, considering that you have a built-in way for your class to get spell damage. Anyway, that's my basic Hearthstone Arena Shaman deck, and we're going to see how far it can go next time. If you enjoyed this, please click the like button, or on your touchscreen, please lick the like button. Warning, licking the touchscreen is not recommended. And don't forget to subscribe to Demonac Games for more Hearthstone Arena and other gaming videos.